Let's talk about what a hurdle lead leg should look like. This is the second video in this series where I'm doing a deep dive into hurdle technique and at a really practical level, so it really helps hurdle coaches and athletes. The first video in this series, I covered the starting blocks to the first hurdle, and here we pick it up from there. I'm going to talk about what you should look for in ideal technique, but also some common mistakes that you might see, and then also give you some ideas on how you or your athlete can get better with their lead leg. I'm also going to cover something that might ruffle some feathers because some really good coaches and athletes are doing something that I don't think is quite right. I'm going to cover that, so let's check it out. So here's where we left off last week with Jack having his plant leg going into the hurdle. What I want you to notice at this point is where his lead leg is. He's starting to bring his heel up towards his butt, and as I advance this frame, you can see that he actually gets it right there with a really tight knee, and he keeps doing this until his thigh is pointing right towards the top of the hurdle. Now this is ideal because at this point you should see his lower leg is actually behind his knee. Now ideally his knee wouldn't need to lift any higher than this and he would only drive forward. But we can see here that it actually lifts up a little bit, which is pretty common, and then he continues to extend his knee. Now here when the athlete gets their heel right above the hurdle, there's something you want to look for. And that's the amount of extension that they have at their knee. And this is the point of contention that I brought up. A lot of hurdle coaches are teaching people to go over the hurdle with a bent knee. I have to admit that in some of my previous videos, I've mentioned that keeping the lead leg bent is a good thing. But I've softened on that stance, and in a little while, I'm going to show you why. If we continue to move forward over the hurdle, you see that his heel starts to drop down. His knee stays locked at that same almost open angle the whole time until he touches down. I'm going to show you another really good athlete here. This is Carson, and at this point, he's a first-year collegiate. Notice that his knee is really bent also with his heel tucked to his butt. And like Jack, when he gets to this point where his thigh is parallel and his knee is driving towards the hurdle, his lower leg is behind him. And as he moves towards the hurdle, he'll extend his leg and he gets a near full extension. Now, what I mentioned with Jack is once their heel passes the hurdle, you really want to see it start to move down. Unfortunately, Carson's continues to go forward before it starts to go down, but it still moves really well. So here's Leah, and we can see a girl doing it. Her knee is in the same spot, heel tucked up to her butt. Her heel is also tucked up towards her butt. And as she extends towards the hurdle, her lower leg is also angled back. Now, ideally, this is as high as she would need to ever lift her knee so she can go straight over the hurdle. But we can see that Leah's knee actually goes a little bit higher. It's not ideal. It's something that she works on. And you can see the angle of the thigh is the direction that you're actually driving towards. And at the point where her heel is at the top of the hurdle, you can see that she has a slight bend. It's very common for girls and women hurdlers to have more bend in their knee than men. This is due to the fact that they have a lower hurdle, and it's the kind of thing they can get away with. And as she advances over the hurdle, we also see her leg go down towards the track. Now let's look at them from a straight-on view. And if you were to see them from a front view, you should be able to see that their lead leg is swinging straight underneath their body and straight in that same plane towards the hurdle. This looks really good right here. And here's Carson. You can see he's also bringing his leg straight underneath him and towards the hurdle. And as we see Leah here, this is something that's always been a challenge for her, but you can see the angle of her lower leg. This is actually a very common issue with young hurdlers. The problem with this is it sets up a little bit of a rotational force going into the hurdle when you really want everything to go forward, but now we have a little swinging that your body's going to have to compensate for. Here's another example of an athlete swinging their leg around here. This is typically because the athlete previously used a 5-step or 4-step, which would bring them too close to the hurdle, and they learned to do this because they would otherwise hit their leg on the way up. Either way, this sets up some rotational forces, which puts you off balance, and it's a bad habit that you have to break and learn how to swing your leg straight through. Now here's another example of an athlete driving his knee too high. It's one of the most common errors in hurdling. So here's another common problem with a hurdling lead leg. Here we'll see that this athlete actually has their knee too open. And you can tell that because at the point where his thigh is pointing straight towards the hurdle, his leg is already extended. If you remember from earlier, I said that at this point, the lower leg should be angled back like this, and then the foot here. Now here's another athlete with the exact same issues. It's a problem for two reasons. One is because it's slower to move a limb that's longer and more open. The other is because you have a lot of momentum now lifting up versus forward towards the top of the hurdle, which is what you really want. Now here's the last thing that I'm considering a mistake, and this is the controversial part. It's when an athlete, in my opinion, goes over the hurdle with their knee too bent. You can see what I mean by that here. Here's why I think it's a problem. If at the moment your heel clears that hurdle and your knee is bent, then that means your heel is lower and you have to be higher over the hurdle in order to clear it. It's only logical. So the bent leg, even though the intent was to help you get faster over the hurdle, the problem is it's a limiting factor on how low you can be over the hurdle. Now, after you clear the hurdle and you want to hook that knee, there's not a problem with that because you're already over the hurdle and you can do whatever you want. But it's definitely something you need to consider. So now I'm going to show you some ways that you can work on improving your lead leg. This is stuff pulled right out of my Hurdling 101 and 201. You can do a lead leg wall drill to work on this. You can do walking drills. You can do skipping drills, all focused on the lead leg. Then you can finish it off with what I like to call off-speed hurdling. That's where you have the hurdles pinched closer together at a distance where you can run at them at about 60 to 70% speed. So you don't need to worry about getting to the hurdle in 3 steps, but you're able to work fully on one aspect at a time so you can isolate your lead leg to make sure it's moving perfectly. If you'd like me to review your hurdling video, I've got 2 options for you. One is you could sign up for a free hurdle video review of my website at acemethodcoaching.com. What I do is from all the requests that I get, I choose about 5 each week to do free on my live stream. But if you're really serious about hurdling, I recommend you sign up for a virtual coaching session. That's where you send me your videos and any questions you have, and I'll put all my energy into doing a great job of telling you what you need to work on, how to make things better, some drills you need to work on, and good advice so that you can improve and reach your goals. You can also check that out on my website, but I'll also leave in a link in the description below. And if you'd like to learn anything about hurdling or how I can help you, go to my website at acemethodcoaching.com. Until next time, Coach Ace out.